Have you ever wondered why sometimes when you're playing, you're able to win games against players that are seemingly better than you? If this has happened to you, I can assure you it wasn't luck. You probably utilized a few of the tips I'm about to go through without even realizing it. I recommend going through this video as a checklist to make sure you're focusing on all these tips whenever you play. Helping me today, I have my sister Kennedy and Drew. What you're gonna realize is the main way you beat these better players is by making better decisions. Let's go over what those decisions are. First way you're gonna do this is by targeting your opponent's weaknesses. If you're playing a better player and you're playing into their strengths, it's gonna be pretty much impossible to win, right? So if you're being smart, you'll figure out what their weaknesses are so that you can make them hit those shots more throughout the point. When I say weaknesses, generally I'm referring to the weaker side of an opponent's game. So you have a forehand and a backhand, right? 80% of players have a much weaker backhand than their forehand. So during a point, you can do what you can to make them hit their backhand more. So watch this point and look how I can make my opponents hit a backhand on pretty much every single shot. As you can see, regardless of where you are in the court, by getting it more to the left sides of your opponent's bodies, if they're righty, you pretty much force them to hit a backhand. So it's not super complicated of how you do this. Let me take you through each specific part of the court you can do this on though. So if I'm serving and I want to get to my opponent's backhand, all I need to do is aim more towards the left side of the box if they're a righty. So you can see, forcing Kennedy to hit a backhand there. A lot of the time, guys, your opponents will just have a worse backhand in return. So this is an easy way to get more free points. Another great time to target your opponent's weaknesses is when they're back and you're up. So when your opponents are back, their primary goal is to make it in so that they can get on a neutral playing field, right? But if you're constantly making them hit their weaker side, it's gonna be a lot more challenging for them to do so. So an example of that looks something like this. You can see as they're trying to come in, all I'm doing is getting it right at the depth of their feet towards their backhand, where it's pretty difficult for them to do anything. But arguably the best time to target your opponent's backhand is when you're in a dinking situation. So as you can see, when I'm dinking, all I need to do to target Kennedy's backhand when I'm hitting cross is get it a little bit more towards the middle. So you see there, I'm forcing her to hit her backhand. One of the best aggressive dinks is to go right at their inside leg. So you can see there, it's a little bit challenging for Kennedy to get under the ball. If I want to go to Drew's backhand in front of me, all I need to do, get him on that outside. Generally, you want to dink cross court more than down the line, so this is probably the better option. When you're dinking, the main thing to keep in mind is that you can go to your opponent's backhands and that they might have a lot harder time with that. And I'm sure if you've played and you get into dinking rallies a lot, you've experienced that your opponent's dinks on the backhand side aren't as good. So if you're playing a player like that, you can be a little bit more aggressive in terms of going for speed ups. And the same goes for when you're playing a team and they're back. If you notice one of the players isn't necessarily as good at using the drop or the drive or just their third shot in general, what you can do is target that player and it'll be a lot easier for you to keep them back. A lot of the time, one guy will be insane with their drops and getting it in the kitchen every single time, and the other player won't be as good. So make it a lot easier on yourself if you just target the player that's not quite as good. Before I get to the next section though, guys, if you're liking the video so far, make sure to subscribe. Every week we make a new video that's designed to help you improve, so subscribe if you want to see more. Another great way though to give yourself an edge against better players is to go for better serves. If you play pickleball, then you probably know for the most part, the main goal of your serve is consistency. So you don't want to be coming out here serving as hard as you can and missing half of them, right? It's not like tennis where we have 2 chances, so you want to be making at least 9 out of 10 serves. If you can make 9 out of 10 serves, the better that your serves are, you're going to have more of an advantage. We already know that targeting your opponent's weaknesses is a great way to make your serves tougher, but now I want to take you through my 3 top ways to make things a little bit more difficult for your opponents on their return. The first way to make your serves more difficult is to increase your power. So if you're just getting started off, your sole goal on your serve might be to make it in. But if you're hitting serves like this, you're gonna make it really easy for your opponents to hit hard returns, and that's gonna make your third shot a lot more difficult. But by putting a little extra pace on your serve like this, you make it a lot more challenging for your opponents to hit a good return. And I'm not saying you have to hit the serve as hard as you can. You just want to get it a little more powerful so that your opponents have less time to react. The caveat here is that when you go harder, you also have the chance of reducing your consistency. So you never want to go too hard, because if you're going too hard, you might drop under that 9/10 ratio where you don't want to be. So these serves are a good example of how much power you should be going for. Not too much, but still a pretty good amount of pace. What you don't want to do is lose your form by going too hard, which looks like this. The next part of hitting good serves though is going deep in the box. So when you're hitting a serve, you make it a lot easier on your opponents if you hit it shallow in the box. Know the farther that you are able to hit it in the box, the more challenging you're making it for your opponents. So generally, and I've said this a lot on my channel, you want to try to aim for the back third. If I'm aiming for the back line, there's a very high chance I'm gonna miss it long, and that's probably happened to you. So I like to aim for the back third. So I like to aim for the very start of the back third. And that way, if I miss it a little bit too far, the ball still lands in. So let me show you how that looks. When you're able to get the ball deep like this, there's a few things that it does. One, it makes your opponents have to run farther from the time they hit the ball to get to the kitchen. So you actually have a lot more space in terms of getting the ball at their feet. And two, it gives your opponents less time after the bounce to hit the ball. So the closer that your opponents have to hit the ball to the bounce, the higher the chance that they hit a bad return. That's because when the ball bounces, it can jet off in random directions sometimes, and that might make your opponent miss hit it a little bit. To get the serve deep though, all you need is a combination of power and height. If I'm going super hard, but the ball is barely going over the net, it's gonna be tough to get deep, right? There I hit it pretty hard, but the ball only landed in the middle of the box. So to get those deep serves, you wanna go pretty hard, but you wanna give yourself probably 2 to 3 feet over the net. That way, it's gonna go deep every single time. And that arc actually makes it a little bit more challenging for your opponents too. If you can get that arc, it actually makes the bounce of the ball a little more erratic, so it's a win-win. The last part to making your serves more difficult though, is to get some spin on the ball. Just know if you're serving, the number one spin you're always gonna use is top spin, where you brush up behind the ball and make the ball spin as if it's rolling away from you. So a topspin serve looks like this. What that also does is when the ball bounces, it jets off towards your opponents. Just know to get topspin, all you need to do is make sure that your paddle is going up like this behind the ball as you're making contact. And when you do this, it makes the ball have that spinning action. So another example, looking at other spins you can put on the ball on your serve, I also love what's called the screwball, where I use side spin. That looks like this. So as you can see, when I hit that serve, it kind of makes the ball curve a little bit to the right. And all you need to do to make that happen is that when you're hitting the ball, you need to make sure your paddle is cutting to the side like this. So topspin is up like this, and the screwball is actually sideways. With the screwball though, I look at it as more of a change-up. So if I were you, I'd hit my topspin probably 80% of the time, and then the other 20% of the time, I can do the screwball or any other serve I like to do to mix it up. This just keeps your opponents from getting used to your serves. And if you want to go deeper into serves, I have a full video on that. My next tip though to be better players is to stop making reckless mistakes on your return. So as you know, when you're the returning team, you're defending against your opponent's scoring points. So the more reckless, careless mistakes that you make, the easier you make it for your opponents to win. Because of this, when I'm returning, I like to follow a safer strategy, especially earlier in the point. So this all starts with the return itself. When I'm hitting my return, I want to give myself space, and I want to hit returns that I think I can make every single time. There's never a reason you should be missing your return. What that looks like is this. So as you can see, the return I just went for didn't look like anything too special, but it's a return that I can make every single time. And one big thing I'd like you to focus on is where I aimed that return. So I went right down the middle. And I like going down the middle because when you go down the middle on your return, you get rid of all the chances that you're gonna miss it wide. If I'm going, right towards the sideline, there's a very high chance that I might miss-hit the serve and my opponent gets a free point. The other thing I like to think about is my height over the net. So as you can see, that return went pretty deep, and I also got it about this high over the net. So this is 2.5, 3 feet over the net. And I like doing that because when I go higher over the net, I minimize the chances that I'm gonna miss it in the net. So in terms of return safety, I think it's best to give yourself a few feet of clearance over the net, use that underspin return, and go right down the middle. Once you get up to the kitchen though, after your return, the same strategy continues. So at this part of the point, it's also really important that you follow a strict strategy so you're not reckless. So as I said earlier in the video, when you get up here after your return and your opponents are back, your primary goal is to keep them back. And the main way you do that is by hitting deep, low volleys at their feet so that they can't come in and attack. So that looks like this. I'm not going for crazy winners. All I'm doing is getting it right at their feet as hard as I safely can to where I know I'm not gonna miss. What I see so many players do though is get reckless in this situation, which looks like this. So as you saw there, Kennedy did a pretty good job of hitting a drop and she started to come forward. But because I'm returning, I got a little antsy and I still wanted to be aggressive. And that backfired and it made me miss into the net. What's important to know though, is if you're not getting really high balls, it can be pretty reckless to go for hard shots from this low position right here. And if your opponents are playing well, they're gonna be trying to make you hit from here. So a lot of the time, you need to take your foot off the gas and accept that you can't go quite as hard anymore. If I'm to go hard from this position and Kennedy's sitting right here, I give her a pretty easy mid-height volley that she can get aggressive on. So a lot of the time, I'm actually better off slowing the shot down from this situation so that I can get it at Kennedy's feet like this. So as you can see there, I got it at Kennedy's feet, so she had to hit up, which gave me the ability to attack there. So it's totally fine if you're returning and you lose your aggressive situation in the point. It's okay to settle for a dinking battle. So if Drew's back and he hits a really good drop like this, my best bet is probably to surrender my aggressive position in the point and get into a dinking situation. To be able to win in these dinking situations though, you need to have consistent and accurate dinks. The only way to make this happen though is with practice. I created the Dink Master to be the perfect way to practice your dinks on your own at home. Think about how much better your dinks would be if you could practice them a little bit every day. It's really just the perfect way to get more reps every week. If you want to check it out, head to the link below. The next thing I want to go through that's a great way to give yourself an edge against better players is mixing up your strategy more. So just like on our serves where we deviate from topspin, when we're in a normal point, we could deviate from the standard strategy of pickleball to surprise our opponents. Before I go over how to do that though, I want to cover what the standard strategy of pickleball is. So in the standard strategy of pickleball, after I hit my serve, I want to go for a drop. And after I hit my drop, if it's good, I want to try to make my way in where I might use a reset. And if I get in, we get into this dinking situation like this. And while we're dinking, one team will be looking for a slightly higher ball that they can speed up on. Generally, that's how most points progress at a high level. When we mix it up, what we want to do is throw in things that our opponents aren't expecting. So the 3 shots I like to use to deviate from my normal strategy are the drive, the lob, and the drop shot. So out of the 3 shots, the drive is the one that we'll use earliest in the point. So generally, I like to use my drive right after I hit my serve and my opponents are coming in. And when you use a drive, it's still okay to use a drop after like I just did, but a lot of times if you hit it well, you can actually get a free point by making your opponent miss a volley. When do you go for a drive though? I like to go for my drives when my opponents hit me a shorter and higher return, which might look something like this. So as you can see there, Kennedy's return didn't go very deep, so when I hit my drive, they have a lot less time to react. You don't want to go for your drive every time that your opponent hits a short return, but it's way more effective when you're closer than if you're farther away on a deep return. The next change-up shot I want to go over though is the drop shot. So the drop shot is hit when your opponents are back, and all I'm doing is hitting a really short ball that my opponent hopefully can't get to before it bounces twice. And the best time to do this is when you're in an aggressive situation. Because if I'm not in an aggressive situation, my opponents might already be moving forward. So a bad drop shot would look something like this. My opponent's already moving forward, so when I go for a drop shot, I'm essentially just giving her a ticket to the kitchen. A good time to go for a drop shot is when you have a super easy shot that your opponent might be backing up for. So if Kennedy's giving me a high ball like this, she's probably gonna expect me to do something like this where I slam the ball, which she's not gonna wanna move forward if I'm gonna do that. So I can trick her in this situation by going for the drop shot. She's expecting me to go hard. Because I go really soft, she doesn't have enough time to react because she's not ready for it. I would only use this shot about 1 to 2 times per game though, because if you do it too much, your opponents are gonna catch on and they're gonna start predicting it. My last change-up shot that I love is the lob. When you're in a dinking situation, your opponents are expecting you to either dink or hit a speed up. So they're not necessarily expecting you to go for a shot that goes over the head. So a lot of the time, when I use the lob, I can actually take my opponents by surprise and they're not ready for it. When you hit your lob, I think it's important that you disguise it as a dink to the last second so they have less time to react. So as you can see here, I'm in a normal dinking situation and I go for the surprise lob. And if you do this one right, guys, it works very well. Just like the drop shot though, don't go for this too often or your opponents are gonna be ready for it and they're gonna be able to smash it. And if you like lobs and drop shots, make sure to like this video and comment what you want to see next. Next though, guys, to beat better players, you need to make sure you're focusing on your court positioning throughout the point. And there's a few key situations where I see a lot of players getting this wrong. The first is when they're at the kitchen line. So first and foremost, if you're at the kitchen, you almost always want to be glued to the line. So you want to pretend like you're literally glued to the line because this is the best spot to be on the court. When you're closer to the net, you have a better angle. And if you have an easy shot, it's a lot easier to finish off the point. A lot of the time, you might actually set yourself up by giving your opponent a high ball. And when you do this, this is your one exception to actually take a quick step back to give yourself a little bit more time. So if I'm dinking with Kennedy and I accidentally give her a high ball, I can take a quick step back, which gives myself time to react, and I can get back into this dinking situation. If I just stay here in that situation, there's a very high chance I won't have enough time to react and I'll miss. The next positioning situation you need to focus on is when you should move forward when your opponents are up. If I'm giving Kennedy really easy high shots like this and I'm back, I definitely don't want to move forward. In that situation where I gave her a high ball, it's in my best interest to stay back. When I want to move forward is when I can make Kennedy hit a ball low, below the height of the net. Because from below the height of the net, she can't really attack. So let me show you how that looks. I hit a good drop, I move in, and Kennedy can't really do anything but surrender, like I said earlier, and then that way I get myself into a dinking situation. If I give her a mid-height ball between her shoulders and her knee, what I want to do is move into the transition zone around right here so I can use a reset. So I give her this mid-height ball, move into the transition zone, use my reset, and I'm in that dinking situation again. I also see a lot of players that hit a good drop right at their opponent's feet, but they stay back, so it's completely useless. So like I said at the beginning of the video, guys, if you want to beat better players, you need to focus on making better decisions. So you need to make sure that when you're playing better players, you focus on everything we just went through. And if you want to learn 10 pickleball strategies I wish I knew earlier, watch this.